Yellowjackets, the hit American drama series featuring an ensemble cast, hit screens last November and received generally positive reviews. The second season has recently been given the go-ahead, and fans and social commentators have praised it for tackling issues faced by teenage girls, which is super important in this day and age. Today we are discussing how Yellowjackets validates the experiences of young ladies and other Yellowjackets bits and pieces. So don't go anywhere. Well, what's it all about? Well, as we know, the show was released last year to critical acclaim and instantly became the second most watched show on Showtime. The finale had a whopping 1.3 million viewers, which in this day and age, with so many options and a ton of streaming services, is pretty impressive. The show tells the story of a girls' high school football team, the Yellowjackets, who head off to the West Coast to take part in a tournament. However, whilst flying across Canada, their plane crashes and the girls are forced to fend for themselves. The show is set across two timelines, the 1996 story of the girls' plane crash and a second present-day timeline, which shows the survivors in their modern-day lives, attempting to move on from the harrowing events following their plane crash. It turns out the girls were out in the wilderness for almost 2 years before they were found, which takes a little suspension of disbelief, but some of them are able to cope better than others. The second timeline brings with it a more serious tone, as the girls, now women, struggle to come to terms with what happened all those years ago. The show encapsulates and explores brilliantly some of the realities and experiences of being a young woman, some of which we will speak about today. First up, we're looking at how the show validates young women. Stay with us. As we have seen time and time again in shows like this, women's experiences are often trivialized, but not here, which we think is great. Of course, the show is heavily dominated by women, so they would be treading on eggshells if they were to insinuate that the experiences of our heroines weren't particularly important. We have seen it too many times, to the point where it becomes a running joke. Something terrible happens to a young woman in a TV show or movie, and it is treated as silly, or, infuriatingly, not as important as her male counterparts. Yellowjackets smashes all those preconceived ideas out of the water, and doesn't deal in cliches whatsoever. Whatever experiences we are talking about throughout Season 1, they are all validated, and not just the obvious ones, and especially in the second timeline, when the older version of the girls are looking back. They're not looking back through rose-tinted glasses at, quote, a simpler time, unquote. That would be absurd. It wasn't simple at all, but you know the sort of feeling we mean. It all matters to them when they're looking back, who they were and what they experienced. It also shows how their experiences really shape who they become. For example, Misty being bullied makes her defensive and paranoid as she gets older, and we also see how she makes some odd decisions in the first timeline as she realizes how her tormentors can't live without her. What did you make of the first season? Next, we're looking at the group dynamics. Some of the show's creators, Ashley Lyle mainly, has suggested that social hierarchies are drilled into young girls from a very young age, which is probably true. She revealed how when the characters of Yellowjackets are taken out of their comfort zones and dropped into the Canadian wilderness, the personality changes are even more vast. Speaking about this recently, Lyle said, "It's a more interesting way of having things fall away. The mask is even thicker. It's a more layered amount of preconceived notions of how to behave and act. Also, we're watching a show about a football team here. The characters are used to ingrained group dynamics and doing exactly what their position dictates on the field. And we see this at the beginning. The girls instantly look to their coach, and then Jackie, the team captain, to guide them through their harrowing ordeal. But once they realize Jackie literally has no idea what to do, like everyone else, she quickly loses any power or influence she might have once had. These new dynamics now mean there is space for someone to step up, and Misty takes the bull by the horns. She is the one to make a difference, and her character begins to flourish. Seeing how these dynamics fluctuate is pretty interesting. What did you guys make of this? We're discussing the brutality of teenagers now. Stay tuned. We've all been teenagers before, and some teenagers can be an absolute nightmare, as you will remember. And one of the things this show gets spot on is how callous and brutal the girls are. In many other shows, teenage girls are shown as naive and sweet, but Yellowjackets shows how they can and often do behave. As we see things turn nasty even before the plane crash, perceiving one of her fellow teammates as a weak link, Tessa ends up breaking her leg, meaning the girl cannot play. But once the plane crashes, the girl's bitchiness, as well as violence, is ramped up to 11. The girls are all too easily prepared to kill animals, amputate limbs, and even hunt each other, although we're not too sure of the reason for the latter. Hopefully that will be cleared cleared up in the second season. But we fear the brutal aspects of the relationship between the girls has only really just begun. The second season is set to give us more of an idea as to how and why they became a cult. But you can bet your bottom dollar we haven't finished with all the violence. What did you guys make of this aspect of the show? Pretty heavy, right? Next up, what can we expect to see season 2? Well, Yellowjackets season 1 only finished this past January, so it won't be back on our screen for a while yet. But that doesn't stop us from playing Guess the Release Date. And in a little piece of good news, Gary Levine, president of entertainment over at Showtime Networks, told of how the network was hoping for an annual cycle. He then went on to say that he believes fans of the first season deserve that, before saying, "I also think that when you have a show that has this kind of momentum, you don't want to let it dissolve." So all this chatter points to the suggestion that Yellowjackets season 2 could potentially be with us at the same time as last year, which means a November release date. The second season was delayed thanks to, yep, you guessed it, COVID. The Omicron variant meant that production was shut down during filming this past winter, which could mean the planned release date of November could be pushed back slightly. But all going well, we should see the second installment before 2022 is over. Are you guys looking forward to Yellowjackets season 2? And what about the plot? Stay with us to hear all about it. Well, of course, as of right now, we're pretty much in the dark as to what the second season might consist of. But much like the release date, that won't stop us from speculating. The season 1 finale left us with a ton of questions, not least who the poor girl was who served dinner in the very first episode. We also wouldn't mind if the creators let us in on who owns the cabin in the middle of the wilderness. Like, there's nothing for miles and miles, but someone must have built it, right? But all of this pales in comparison when we discuss the storyline of Lottie. We will need clarification as to how she became leader of the cult. We saw her dishing out orders at the end of season 1, which saw Nat kidnapped, so it could be down to Misty and the rest to rescue their friend. Whatever happens in the second season, it's highly likely that we will be in for lots more brutal storylines. What else can we watch in the meantime? There are a couple of shows which are similar to Yellowjackets, the most obvious of which is probably Lost. Strange goings-on occur after the passengers of a plane crash wash up on a mysterious island. Also, Hannibal will offer you more gruesome tales if it is that sort of thing you're looking for whilst you wait for season 2. It follows the FBI's hunt for a serial killer and also features a load of blood and gore. The 100 also offers viewers a more dystopian watch. Years after Earth's inhabitants are wiped out thanks to nuclear war, 100 juvenile delinquents are sent back to see if the planet is habitable yet. But when they arrive, they're in for one heck of a shock. What will you be watching whilst we're all waiting for Yellowjackets season 2? Let us know below. As always, thanks for dropping in to see us today. And remember to join us next time when we will be discussing all sorts of fun bits and pieces. And if you feel like doing us a solid, why not like and share today's video while subscribing to our channel to make sure you don't miss out on more great content. Bye guys!